The Panzer. It marks the very beginning of Germany's armored warfare, but calling it a tank is already being generous. Designed in the early 1930s, the Panzer I was never intended for real combat. It was an armored training tool, a stepping stone for the crews who would later drive the Panzer III and I-4. Yet despite this, it somehow found itself fighting everywhere, from the Spanish Civil War to the invasion of Poland and France. Its armament? 2 machine guns, no cannon. Against infantry or lightly armed vehicles, it could hold its own. But facing anti-tank rifles or early tank guns, it was hopelessly outmatched. The armor was thin, the engine weak, and the 2-man crew was overwhelmed by multitasking. However, what Panzer I did accomplish was far more important than its kill count. It trained the first generation of German tank crews, helped refine tactics, and became the rolling prototype of Blitzkrieg doctrine. By the time the war reached the Soviet Union, the Panzer I was fully obsolete, but without it, Germany's armored corps would never have grown into the force it became. And yet, even this underpowered tin box outperforms the tank sitting at number 9. Yes, really. The Panzer II wasn't supposed to exist this long. Originally conceived as a temporary solution, while Germany rushed the Panzer III and IV into production, the Panzer II instead became one of the most commonly used tanks during the early Blitzkrieg years. Armed with a 20mm autocannon, it could shred lightly armored vehicles and infantry positions, but it struggled against anything heavier. By 1940, its armor was already outdated. Anti-tank rifles and even heavy machine guns could pierce it. But despite its weaknesses, the Panzer II had 2 major strengths: speed and reliability. It scouted ahead of armored columns, exploited breakthroughs, and acted as the eyes and ears of the Wehrmacht. In North Africa, it performed surprisingly well thanks to its mobility, though even there it was clearly outclassed. By mid-war, most Panzer IIs were converted into recon vehicles or self-propelled guns. Yet its role in early victories was undeniable. But the next tank wasn't even German at first, and somehow it became one of the engines of Blitzkrieg. Panzer 38T is proof that sometimes the best German tanks weren't even German at all. When Germany occupied Czechoslovakia in 1939, it captured one of Europe's most advanced light tank designs, the LTVZ 38. The Wehrmacht quickly realized its potential and mass-produced it under a new name, Panzer 38T. For the early Blitzkrieg campaigns, this tank was a workhorse. Its 37mm gun could penetrate most Allied armor in Poland and France, and its optics and build quality often surpassed German-made machines. The greatest strength of the 38T, however, was its reliability. While heavier German tanks broke down, the Czech 38T simply kept moving. On the Eastern Front, the story changed. Against T-34s and KV series heavies, the 38T was hopelessly outclassed. But even when it became obsolete as a frontline tank, its chassis proved so robust that it became the foundation for some of Germany's most effective tank destroyers, including the Hetzer. In short, not the strongest, but one of the most valuable borrowed assets Germany ever used. And now, we're finally entering the realm of true German design. The first tank built for Blitzkrieg from day one. If Blitzkrieg had a default tank, this was it. The Panzer III was designed from the ground up to be Germany's main battle tank, long before that term even existed. While other nations still used clumsy multi-turret experiments, Germany focused on something revolutionary: a tank built specifically for fast, coordinated, radio-driven warfare. Early versions with 37mm guns struggled, but once upgraded with the 50 kWk 38, the Panzer III became a dangerous and versatile opponent. Its biggest strength wasn't firepower, it was crew efficiency. A dedicated commander, gunner, loader, driver, and radio operator meant this tank performed like a well-oiled machine. In an era when many Soviet and Allied tanks overloaded their commanders, the Panzer III had a tactical edge built directly into its layout. In France, in the Balkans, and especially in North Africa, the Panzer III proved itself as the backbone of German armored thrusts. But everything changed on the Eastern Front. When the T-34 and KV heavy tanks appeared, the Panzer III could no longer keep up, even with upgrades. By 1943, it was largely replaced by the Panzer IV and Panther, but it continued to serve in support and specialist roles. And speaking of replacements, the next tank didn't just replace the Panzer III, it became the backbone of the entire German war machine. If the Panzer III was the brain of Blitzkrieg, the Panzer IV became its muscle. Originally designed as an infantry support vehicle with a short-barrel 75mm howitzer, the Panzer IV underwent one of the most dramatic evolutions of any tank in the war. When confronted with the T-34 on the Eastern Front, Germany realized it needed more punch, and the Panzer IV delivered. The switch to the long-barrel 75mm QK-40 instantly transformed it into a lethal tank killer. Suddenly, the Panzer IV could take on T-34s and Shermans head-on, making it Germany's most adaptable medium tank. Its armor was steadily improved, its turret layout was efficient, and, unlike many German designs, it remained mechanically reasonable and mass-producible. With over 8,500 units built, no German tank fought more often, in more places or for longer. From Poland to North Africa, from Kursk to Normandy, the Panzer IV was always there, doing the heavy lifting that the more glamorous Tigers and Panthers could never sustain. It wasn't the strongest, nor the fastest, nor the most advanced, but it was the tank Germany depended on when everything else broke down or ran out. But from this point forward, every tank on this list becomes either legendary or infamously over-engineered. And the next one is both. The Panther is the definition of brilliant but flawed. Germany built the Panther in response to the shock of encountering the T-34 in 1941. What followed was a tank that combined the best ideas Germany could gather: thick, sloped armor, a high-performance suspension, and a 75mm AK-42 gun that was so powerful it could punch through almost any Allied tank at extreme range. On paper, the Panther was a masterpiece. In reality, a masterpiece that broke down a lot. Early Panther Ds at Kursk overheated, caught fire, threw tracks, and suffered engine failures with alarming frequency. Even later models, Ausf A and G, required intensive maintenance. The tank was simply too complex, too expensive, and too difficult to mass produce at the scale Germany needed. But when a Panther did work, it was one of the most dangerous tanks of the entire war. Its accuracy, penetration power, mobility on open terrain, and frontal armor made it a deadly sniper on the battlefield. Against Shermans and T-34-85s, it was a nightmare opponent. The Panther's tragedy is that it arrived too late and too complicated for Germany's collapsing logistics. And as good as the Panther was, it still lived in the shadow of a tank that terrified entire Allied battalions just by existing. If there's one tank that became a legend during the war itself, it's the Tiger Horn. Introduced in 1942, the Tiger Horn was designed to dominate the battlefield through sheer superiority. Thick, vertical armor, massive tracks, and the iconic 80mm KW-36 gun. This cannon could destroy Shermans, Churchills, and even early T-34s from distances where they couldn't fire back effectively. Its presence alone often caused Allied units to call for artillery, air support, or simply fall back. The Tiger didn't just fight. It imposed psychological control over the battlefield. But behind this intimidating facade was a long list of problems. It was slow, mechanically fragile, and required more maintenance hours per kilometer than almost any other German tank. Its engine and transmission were perpetually overstressed, and its massive weight made bridges, mud, and steep terrain serious threats. Still, in the hands of elite crews, the Tiger I produced some of the highest kill ratios of the war. It was a tank that thrived when it dictated the engagement. Long range, open ground, prepared defenses, and struggled anywhere else. Not the most practical, not the most numerous, but absolutely one of the most iconic armored vehicles ever built. But believe it or not, the next vehicle wasn't even a tank, and yet it achieved more kills, had better reliability, and changed the course of German armored warfare. The StuG III wasn't a tank, and that's exactly why it was so successful. Originally built as an infantry support assault gun, the StuG III was intended to suppress bunkers, strongpoints, and defensive lines. But as the war progressed, especially on the Eastern Front, it evolved into one of the most effective tank destroyers of the entire conflict. Its strengths came from simplicity and efficiency. By removing the turret, engineers reduced cost, height, and mechanical complexity. The result was a vehicle with an extremely low silhouette, making it hard to detect and even harder to hit. When equipped with the 75mm StuG 40 L48, it could penetrate T-34s, Shermans, and even heavy tanks from advantageous positions. Unlike many German armored vehicles, the StuG III was reliable, cheap to manufacture, and quick to repair. This made it ideal for Germany's later war economy, where Tiger IIs and Panthers drained resources at unsustainable rates. The StuG, by contrast, could be built in large quantities and deployed everywhere. Its tactical role also suited German defensive doctrine. Positioned in ambush, concealed, firing at long range with high accuracy. With over 10,000 produced, it became the backbone of Germany's armored defense. The StuG didn't inspire myths like the Tiger, but in terms of raw battlefield impact, it outperformed almost everything Germany fielded. But our number 2 pick takes overkill to a whole new level. The heaviest, most intimidating monster Germany ever put on tracks. This is the tank that looks unbeatable, and in the right conditions it nearly was. The Tiger II, known as the King Tiger, was Germany's final word in heavy tank design. With sloped 180mm frontal armor and the devastating 88mm Kukow 43 gun, it could destroy almost any Allied tank before they even reached firing range. Against Shermans and Cromwells, the King Tiger wasn't just dangerous, it was overkill. In ideal situations, the Tiger II was practically invincible from the front. Crews of enemy tanks often reported that even their best rounds simply bounced off its armor, while the King Tiger could fire back with unmatched accuracy and penetration. But for all its battlefield dominance, the Tiger II suffered from fatal flaws. It was enormously heavy, destroying its own transmissions. Its fuel consumption was absurd, making long operations almost impossible. Its mechanical reliability was poor even by late-war German standards. Its size made it an easy target for aircraft and artillery. Germany produced fewer than 500 of them, a number far too small to influence the war's outcome. And while individual Tiger IIs racked up impressive kill counts, the tank as a whole was a strategic liability. Too expensive, too slow to produce, too complex for Germany's collapsing industry. Still, in one-on-one combat, few tanks of WW2, if any, could stand against a fully operational King Tiger. But despite all its power, the King Tiger is not number 1. Because the best German tank of WW2 wasn't the biggest. It was the one that balanced firepower, reliability, and sheer impact on the war. This is the tank that Germany relied on, the real workhorse, the real backbone, the real best overall machine of the entire war. While the Tiger and Panther steal the spotlight, the Panzer IV quietly carried the German army from 1939 to 1945, evolving through more variants than any other German tank. The Ausf H represented the peak of the design. Thickened armor, side skirts for protection, the long barrel 75 mm WK-40, which could penetrate T-34s and Shermans at combat ranges. The later Ausf-J was simplified to reduce cost and production time, a sign of Germany's worsening situation. Yet it remained effective, reliable, and far easier to maintain than the Panther or the Tiger. So why is the Panzer IV #1? Because it had what the others lacked: balance. It wasn't over-engineered like the Panther or Tiger II. It didn't suffer from catastrophic reliability issues. It could be produced in huge numbers, repaired quickly, and deployed anywhere: deserts, forests, snow, cities. In terms of actual strategic impact, no German tank did more. It led the invasions of Poland and France. It fought the British in North Africa. It engaged Soviet armor at Kursk and beyond. It resisted Allied forces in Normandy and the Ardennes. For 6 long years, the Panzer IV remained relevant, something no other German design achieved. It wasn't the strongest tank, but it was the right tank, the machine that best combined firepower, reliability, mobility, and availability. And that's why it earns the #1 spot. If you want us to rank Soviet tanks next, hit subscribe. The T-34 has been waiting patiently